There we are. I've pressed start record. Look at that.
Oh,
And I don't.
so how do we kind of speak to Scott now that he's champion
Is
of
it? Is it Your
with
Highness? Is it?
yeah.
no, just with reverence and absolute, belief in my abilities. The one thing that struck me on the weekend, Tom, which you'd have liked, I came away from it still feeling sort of like Mr. Incredulous. So Joe, who I played in the first round, Joe Thomas, very good player. So when I got to the top table, it was like Scott Phipps was like, You're at the top table, yes. And then even when I was like 2-1 up in the final, and then Joe Thomas came out and said to John Reader, to John, are you? What's the score? I was 2-1 to Scott.
You thought
And
John
he
had
looked
it
at
in the
me,
bag.
yeah, and he said, "Oh, well, you're winning." So yeah, cheers, guys. Thanks. It's just like,
He thought John had it in the bag. He said to me, he was like, "John will get this."
so there you go.
I think
They don't have that. Look at that.
I think it's royalty rules, isn't it? So we can't have our backs
It
to
is.
him.
You need to buy me.
Sir?
You need to buy me. Sir's fine. Beer's fine. Sam Smith as well, who I named the team after. Even he was messaging me with incredulity to say, "Really, you won?" Yes, Sam. Are you sure? Yes, Sam. I
He was
named
more
the team after
concerned.
you, Sam.
He was more concerned that you were parked outside his house, sort of stalker-esque, by the fact that you completely dedicated the team to him. I think.
I don't need to be outside his house. I've got cameras and microphones in plenty of places. He doesn't need to worry about that.
Well,
I'm sure it's very comforting to the people of Woodbridge and Melton.
yeah. On that disturbing note, let's roll the intro, shall we? Hello, everyone. Welcome to New Dice Please, the bite-sized Blood Bowl podcast brought to you by the people at Blood Bowl Live. My name is Chris. Joining me this week, as always, the wonderful Mr. Tom Hovell. Tom, what's your favourite colour?
Ooh, blue.
Oh, how convenient. And joining us, master that he is, we are simply not worthy at his prowess and brilliance, champion of Death of the Demon 2, and all-around great guy, Mr. Scott Bryan. A round of applause from us here in the studio. Scott, what's your favourite colour?
Red.
Beautiful. How convenient. My favorite color, also blue. This week, other than just generally lauding over Scott and wondering how we are worthy to have him in our top right-hand corner, me and Scott were at a tournament this weekend. The three of us have played several tournaments. We've played lots of Blood Bowl at this point, League, Blood Bowl, friendlies, everything like that. And now it's going to be tricky for me to I need to frame this in the right way. There are some things that you experience when you play Blood Bowl that are incredibly frustrating and little pet peeves that we have. So we're going to go through some of our pet peeves, and I don't want us just to be moaning today. It might turn into a little bit of a moan, but let's not try and moan today. Let's list some pet peeves I think many people will have experienced when playing Blood Bowl, and let's maybe suggest some things that could help turn them around. That's the aim. It could turn into a moan session, so bear with us. I'm sure we will come up with some constructive comments as we go along. I think what we'll do is we'll go person by person with the three pet peeves that we've got, and I feel, Tom, it would be rude for us not to allow the champion to lead us to glory. So Brian, if you could give us some of your pet peeves.
Just my liege will be fine, Chris.
Okay.
And that'd be perfectly okay. And royal tributes and tithes and prima nocta and all that good stuff will be obviously in due course. Peeve for me, very little one. It's how the board is set up when you play. Do you play it on a portrait or do you play it landscape? And for me, I find playing landscape frustrating. I prefer the portrait. And I really do. I don't know whether it's, similar for people who play Blood Bowl 3, or it's the way I learned and the way the tables are set up where we go gaming. Aardvarks and Dragons in Woodbridge, everybody. Get there for your local gaming hobby supplies. Everything you want and a free, most wonderful experience from the store manager, Mr. Scott Phipps. Anyway, portrait versus landscape in terms of the board. I'm a portrait guy, and sitting there on 2 chairs, landscape, feels a bit claustrophobic. Not my cup of tea. My suggestion, though, to make it better is just agree with your opponent and agree with the tournament saying, can we turn the table or the mat round? Thank you.
So
Nice, easy, quick. And
it's interesting this. So the Ipswich Classic earlier in the year, based on the size of tables and layout of the room, the pitches, the way that we laid it out, chairs wise and stuff, was so that you were landscape rather than portrait,
Yep.
because of kind of a size issue. But having said that, there was the space because all the tables were individual. It wasn't in a long line, so you did have the space to get up and move around the table. But it's tricky. I don't know. I feel like when I do play games and I'm landscape, do I prefer one way or another? I think I'm so used to portrait that I probably would prefer to be sort of stood behind my end zone. I also feel like because in our league, we've got sort of 3D printed end zones that are branded to our team. So there's also kind of an element of pride being stood behind your end zone and having your team banner there, which I quite like as well. Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, I suppose you could put them on Lazy Susans.
Spin it around.
Man,
Yeah.
At the end of every turn, spin the board. Any players left on the pitch can remain.
You can do it that way. Yeah, I know where you're coming from though, because like you say, I've when I started playing, I played with when you're behind your end zone, and then I think in fact, I think it was the Ipswich Classic was the first time I ever played where it was landscape, and it does get a bit your head. You're like, okay, fine. It is a little bit of a bugbear. I suppose you just have to be clear with your opponent, because again, then there's the argument. Well, do you want to go from left to right or right to left, kind of thing as well?
I guess, yeah. I think it's I get why this is a pet peeve. I do, because it's sort of one of those like just slightly nagging OCD things possibly as well of like, it's just not quite the right way.
And I suppose picking up on what Scott was saying about Blood Bowl 3 and whatever, people who play it, I'm finding more and more people coming to play the board game, which is great, coming from the computer side of things. And I get the impression when I've played against them, they're a bit like, I can't really. I've got a set play in my head, and I can visualize it when I'm behind my touchline, but I can't visualize it on a landscape.
Solution to this one then: chat to your opponent and do what works for both of you. Obviously, if you're stuck in a tournament, there's not a lot you can do, but yeah, I get that one. What's your next pet peeve, Scott?
Next pet
peeve. Sorry. My liege.
Thank you. Next pet peeve. It's one I've raised before. I've talked about this in store. I've talked about it on the Discord. Loom bands for skill markers. Come on, in tournaments, love the skill markers. Obviously, because it's more or less it's one skill, one additional skill per player. Not that many people do double up because obviously SPP are incredibly valuable in tournaments. But within leagues, as you go on, it's not just after week 1, it's week 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And, you've got one player with a blue and a green and a pink on a striped loom band. Then you've got another player with a blue and a red and an orange loom band. And he might have block and that guy have brawler. And it's, So make things clear. Put the skill tabs on there. Put the, we've got the Posca pen on the wall at A and D so people can write their skills on there. It's keeping it easy, keeping it clear, keeping it nice for everybody as well.
Yeah.
So loom bands are one of mine. It's just, I know why people use them and I get that, but if you've got a guy who has block as an additional skill, just write B or K or something on the side of the black base. you can buy other coloured pens, which are very easy, and they're all acrylic, and you can very quickly paint over or wipe or file them off very carefully.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. Like, I think loom bands are quite helpful for things like press to enough or one of your players has stab for the drive. It's like, okay,
Yeah,
we'll chuck a band on it, great. But
or if you don't have a take root or a you've like if you don't have things for like you've boneheaded and you've done for your ogre, or minotaur. I get that, and you can put that all in play. And I get that if it's a temporary thing, but when they're permanent and they're like week after week after week after week.
Equally, I think it's actually the other way around for me. We're having loom bands when you're in a tournament. You're under time pressure already. You having to then go and have a look at a sheet and go hang about. What's that mean? What's that? And I know people say, well, it's blue for black, and all that kind of stuff, and green for guard, and try and colour them up. But absolutely, I think having clear understanding of them.
Yep.
I went out and bought the actual worded ones, the worded bands that fit around the base. I think now you can get ones where you can stick around the base as well. They can got transfer style stickers on the base as well. So even if you didn't want to do the Posca pen, I suppose you could do like a little you could even like cut out the sticky bit of a post-it note and then write on it and then stick it round the base.
On the weekend in the tournament, Mr. John Reader. Good evening, John.
Sorry, was that you won?
Yeah, I don't
you
talk
won the
about it.
tournament.
It's not
Tom.
You never guess what happened, Chris.
Well done.
Thank you. Autograph photos are available for a suitable fee. Just to call out to Mr. John Reader and to Joe Thomas, evening Joe, if you're listening. And they had, they had the skill bands exactly as you said, Tom. Lovely, nice, easy, colourful. You can see which players had the same one. Great. Andy, evening Andy, if you're watching, listening as well. Andy had the little sticky tabs on. I know James was running them as well. Evening, Mr. Hardy. So crystal, nice, easy, no problems at all. And that was really so helpful from a coach's perspective, especially in a tournament. And if you're in a league and you've got months to update things, come on, guys.
I guess the thing here is like, it's always worth it. I think don't be offended if your opponent says to you, I don't understand this system. Can we do something to sort it out? I think, you've got to make sure that your players are clear. You've got to make sure that the skills they've got are clear. It's quite easy. I find it quite easy. I often go to tournaments with the Lizard team where I end up giving the Saurus all the same skill. And that's quite easy. I'm quite fortunate in a way because I can just go, all of these Saurus all have block. There's no need to differentiate them. They're all there. It's kind of clear and obvious. But when you do, when you're probably better than me and you mix it up a bit and you go for a block and a tackle and a frenzy and a mighty blow, it's going to be more fun for you and your opponent. You don't want to be playing and being constantly asked what that player can do, and you don't want to be against someone and you don't really and you get lost because you get confused who's got what. So a nice easy solution here: talk to your opponent, make sure the system works, and be prepared to do something if it doesn't or they don't understand. I think that's good. Scott, last one. My liege.
Last one.
My
Thank
liege.
you.
Last
one
is
is over decorated gaming boards, and I'm looking at GW here as well.
Yeah.
So where you have gaming boards where particularly in the center of the pitch you cannot make out the square edges exactly, where there's a lot of different colors and decorations, and I get that people want to have their pitches, and I get it, it's a nice little revenue stream for GW, but especially when the board gets bumped occasionally off, players move, and when you're trying to move, and if you're sort of somewhat of a more mature age like myself, and maybe you've got glasses and maybe you have been looking at things on the internet in terms of an educational role that maybe other people would find slightly, maybe not before the watershed, I don't know, or maybe things people have sent you, like links about orangutans there, Tom, but less of that.
We've gone off on...
He was driving a golf cart.
We've gone off on an amazing tangent here, Scott. I can't even remember the point you were going to make.
Over decorated boards. Keep them simple. Keep it green or whatever color it's going to be, but have clearly defined lines of where the squares are. Thank you.
Yeah, it annoys the hell out of me, and it's a shame, really, isn't it? Because so many of the GW pitches are so difficult to read, and it's your go-to place for pitches. You know, you can get some really nice neoprene ones and stuff like that. They're not as easy to access. You can make your own, but that takes time to do. So yeah, it is frustrating. It is frustrating. Tom, this is the trickiest one of all of Scott's, I think, because if you turn up to a game and the person you're playing brings that pitch, especially if you don't have one, there is very little you can do about it. So
Absolutely.
what can you do?
Well, I suppose for tournaments, you could potentially put it in the pack. That could you bring this one? You know,
Bring a clear pitch.
Bring the standard Blood Bowl pitch, or Vampires, for example. We've got a nice clear look on them, and you can clearly see them. Things like the Amazons and the Snotling ones, just don't bother bringing those. I suppose that's something you could do for your tournaments. Obviously, you can with league, just talk amongst yourselves. There's some fantastic neoprene ones. In fact, Scott and I went to the tournament in Athena in Norwich, and they had their own personalized ones, and they were brilliant. They were really nice and clear, and just clean and clear on where the squares were for that bit.
The alternative: take a pen and a ruler and mark them yourself. Don't mind. There you go. As a suggestion.
On your own pitch, not on someone else's.
I have seen.
You can offer it to other people.
I have seen people turn to their opponent where the pitch is already out and say, "Can I put this pitch down because the lines are a bit clearer and it's easier to see?" Again, I think don't be offended if your opponent says, "Actually, I can't really see the lines on your one. Do you mind if we use this instead?" And don't be afraid to ask that yourself if your pitch is clearer. You know, everyone's going to have more fun if that's the case.
Yeah, and equally, most of them are double-sided anyway, and one side is slightly better than the other.
Normally, yeah. I think three valid pet peeves there, and I think we've come up with some good kind of possible solutions to them. So
I do have a like, which I really like, but I'll come on to that after we've done the rest of the peeves. So we finish on a positive.
We'll end with three good things when we get to the end. Tom, would you like to go next? What are your pet peeves?
I suppose again, this is talking about squares. It's when your opponent doesn't really count out the squares; they just move the piece.
Yeah.
So and it's equally. I played against some people, and they know the game. They know their team. They know how far they can move and everything like that. And they'll be like, "Move that one, move that one, move that one," and you're like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa!" I just want to double check, and it's maybe because I'm still learning as well. You know, everyone's still learning something, and you're like, could you just slow down a bit? And even if you just count out with your finger, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then pick up the piece and move it, I'm happy with.
Yeah.
And I suppose it follows on from what we've been saying. Just be open with your opponent and speak to them about
Can I just clarify for all our listeners, though, and anyone watching this on the mighty YouTube, that when Tom says he's still learning, it's Blood Bowl and not counting? Well, I'm assuming that, but yeah.
Just learning in general. Well, I just need to learn from you, Scott, obviously.
Yeah, get out. Yeah, of course you do. Everyone does.
I agree with this one. Like, and I have to say, I think I'm quite conscious because sometimes I do this. I'll admit it. I'll confess. Sometimes I do this, but it's normally if I've got like skinks in the backfield. I might pick one up, move it like 4 squares across, and turn it round, because I kind of hope that scenario there's no other players around to dodge away from. I'm doing like half of my allowable movement, and then I'm ending the activation. So it's not too bad. It's particularly bad if people just go, okay, I'm going to get to there, move it along, and you're looking at it and you're like, oh well, depending on which route you've taken, there's definitely some dodges, there's definitely this and that to take into account. It's that scenario where I'm like, yeah, no, I need you for my benefit. I need you to count to just tell me which way you're going, because I've had it where someone's been like, I'm going to move into there. I'm sure we've all had it where either someone's gone to you or you've gone to someone and you've gone, oh, actually there is a dodge to go that way, and either you or them have gone, oh yeah, actually there is, right, okay, and then you might recalculate it or whatever. But yeah, I agree with this one, and yeah, it is a nice, easy solution, isn't it? To just, if your opponent is rushing through, just ask them to slow down.
Yeah, or just clarifying, just you count them out, as what I've done in the past. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. My second one is this is kind of coming from playing chess. So this is where taking back moves after you've moved another figure. So what I mean by that
Okay.
is someone moves a player, and then moves another player and goes, oh, that first player was meant to move to this spot, kind of thing. Now, it's one of those really difficult ones. And I don't know whether it's a rule or not, but I've always worked on the place a bit like chess. You know, you can move a piece and you can keep your finger on it, or you take your finger off and you can go, oh no, bring it back. But as soon as you then move a second piece, the first piece is locked. It shouldn't be able to be moved.
So this is interesting then. So Scott, where would you draw the line here? Because I would tend to probably be a bit kinder, and as long as a dice hasn't been rolled, I will maybe allow something to be taken back, as long as we can both remember where it was, because that's a key thing. If you move 10 players and then you move the 11th and you go, I want to move this one back, then I'll probably turn around and go, I have no idea where he was.
First of all, I think if a dice has been rolled, that's it. That locks in that movement, and we're all agreed on that. In terms of movement, if we were playing against the man, the myth, the legend, the people's favorite, John Reader again, and both on the weekend, you move a player and then you said, oh, actually, can I just either move it back one square to the side, one square, or can I move that? And that's fine.
Yeah.
If, however, you've moved another player and finished their player and without an activation, so assuming no dice have been rolled, if then you come back to the previous player and you say, well, actually, can I move him back to the beginning? Then I think on you. So I don't mind that one or two squares either way, just like a little adjustment, but actually a complete movement. Say for a gutter runner, for example, Chris, if you said, well, I've moved the gutter runner, I'm now going to move my blitzer for Skaven, and just before I move my blitzer, can I move that gutter runner just one square either way? No problems at all. If you move the blitzer and then you said, would you be okay if I move that Skaven? If that would be the difference, maybe between a 1 or a 2 dice block, 9 times out of 10, I'd probably let it go. But then if you say, actually, I've moved that blitzer, can I move my gutter runner all the way around the other board so they're supporting from the other location? That'd be no.
Yeah. I just think for clarity, I would still say if you move one piece, you can say, oh, I've made a mistake and move it back. I would personally still say, regardless of whether the dice have been rolled, if you move one piece and then move another piece, the first piece should be locked. You can't change it, because I think that's, like you say, it can be that very difficult thing, because again, sometimes you win a game by other people making mistakes and giving it back and things. For example, I had one where they moved 2 pieces to form a front cage, and then they realized that their ball carrier couldn't make it to the exact square behind those 2 players. So they said, oh, can I just move those 2 back, kind of thing. And I was like, okay. And I did, and I allowed it, and they scored the next turn. Now, it could be the case that you're like, hang on now, that could have been an infamy.
Wasn't me, was it?
No.
I don't think. Chris, what would you do in that example? So, Tom, you allowed that, and then that cost you a touchdown. What would you do in that scenario, Chris? And again, if it was a friendly, yeah. If it's a league match, if it's a knockout match, or if it's a final match, what would you do?
If dice weren't rolled at any point and they said, oh, actually, I've gone 1 square too far, can I come back one? I would probably allow it, because no dice have been rolled and it's obviously within the player's movement. because you're reducing the movement that they've done rather than increase it. If they said, oh, actually, can I go one square forward? Then I would probably make a judgment on, can I remember how far that player had traveled? And if I couldn't, I would say, I'll be honest, I can't remember how far they've been. So I don't know whether you need to rush or not to do that movement, which involves a dice roll. So no, you can't. I don't think you can do that. Likewise, as well, if they had got to that position by rushing, I'd be like, no, you rolled a dice to get there. You now can't bring that player back a square because you've rolled a dice. So I think I go much more on the dice roll, I think, but
Okay.
I wouldn't, if someone said to me, no, I want you, I want you to, you've done your movement, you've committed to it. I'm not happy with you taking it back. I probably would be fine with it. I guess the smart thing to do before the game, especially in tournament play, is to just agree with your opponent beforehand. Say to them, if you want to take a move back, as long as we both know where they went and you haven't rolled a dice, I'm fine with it. Or if you say to them, I would be more comfortable if once you've moved a place and you've turned that player around, then that player's activation is done and that you don't return to it. And agree with it. And the TOs are always there to make rulings. And say to your TO, this is what we agreed if someone wants to go back on it and whatever it is. So
I would say as well, and something I know we do, and I'm happy to accommodate this and support this. If people want to mark out, so for example, your example there, sorry, Tom, if people want to see, okay, where should I put my cage? If people want to mark it out with dice beforehand, yeah, fine.
Yeah. Oh,
I've got
absolutely.
no problems with that as well.
100%.
So
Yeah, I
yeah,
agree with that. That's sometimes actually better. I find that, and I've started using that to get that visual of, okay, they're going to go there, they're going to go there, they're going to go there, and that's going to move in there. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I'm happy with people putting counters, markers, dice to position where they're going to put those pieces. But my kind of thought would be, as soon as you move that piece, and then you move another piece, regardless of dice, I kind of run on the kind of bit like chess. You can't go back and move things. As soon as you take your finger off that piece, that's it. It's done. That's all. That was how.
he's just harsh. He's Tom Hovell. He's harsh. He's unforgiving. He's just, brutal.
I'm just trying. I want it to be clear. A bit like I like my third one, which is unclear dice.
yes,
That situation where you've got where again, I'm coming at it from more of a tournament style thing, where again you're up against the clock, things are moving along, and people are rolling dice, which is great, and that's what we're here for, and which is what we love. But certain types of dice, I think I've got some in here. No, they're all relatively clear dice, which is nice. But yeah, the standard Blood Bowl dice.
great,
Nice and clear,
beautifully
understand
clear.
exactly what it is. Yeah. But you've got others where you've got really, really, really like horrible ones where I think they're like the snotling ones are really bad to see. Again, Amazons is again on that side of things. And equally, again, from more of a tournament style, I suppose it's the novelty dice ones as well. So where you've got them where, in fact, I might even have some. Yeah. Where I've got the Mario dice ones, that is not really that clear as to exactly what that is.
I don't know. I would be happy with them because like there's a relatively clear system there. I've seen some third party ones where it's so confusing which one's which. It's tricky with dice like the Amazon dice, isn't it? Because they are official GW dice, so it's it's more difficult to be like, we're you can only use GW dice, but you can't use these ones. That's that's tricky. I think most tournaments some tournaments will specify which dice you can and can't bring. Unclear dice really frustrates me. Unclear dice leads me quite nicely onto my first pet peeve. But before I do that, Scott, what it's more difficult with dice because I think it's a more difficult thing to turn to your opponent and go, especially if they've only brought one set of dice, to go, I'm not happy with you using those. If they've got alternatives, if you can see they've got 3 or 4 sets, I think you probably can say, look, I can't see what's on those ones. Would you mind not using them? I think that's okay. But it can be difficult if they haven't brought spares.
I agree. I think if you can get a clarity of dice, the easier, the better. Yeah, I've played with people and they've had dice, and you think, oh, is that a block or is that a stumble? Because both, if you've got a stumble on like a gutter runner, yeah, great, it's just a push. If you've got a block on a gutter runner, then the walls, it's possibly game over. So I think having the clarity of it as well, and if you think the other person has got dice there, and don't be afraid to ask for the result, just to even have a look and pick it up on an inspection just to check. Just removes ambiguity and does that as well.
Yeah. So bring me nicely onto my first pet peeve, which is speed rolling of dice, which I've played a few people who do this, and they fly through it, and it's a situation where, let's say they roll double POW on your player, and then within seconds they've rolled out the armor roll and then immediately rolled out the injury roll, and then the D16s come out, and there's been almost no breath in between any of them, and you suddenly go, whoa, how did we get to a D16 roll so quickly? And I guess, me as the coach against that, I should be paying attention, but sometimes it can happen so fast. These dice can be rolling while you're still turning your player over. And it actually links very nicely into another one of my pet peeves, which is silent players, where they will do it and they won't. I like to think I'm quite good that if I'm rolling the dice, even if I am playing very quick, say you're against the clock or something, and I roll them, I go, okay, right, I'll take that POW, and then I roll the armor dice, and I'll at least, even if I do it quickly, I'll at least go, okay, well, that's a 10, so that's broken armor. Roll them again. Okay, that's a 10, that's a casualty. So I'm at least narrating what's happening, even if there's a bit of a time constraint there. But yeah, when the dice roll so quickly and so many dice are being rolled, and then they're cleared, and then they're rolled again, and then nothing's being said going along with it. Firstly, I'm not sure how I played Blood Bowl because I quite like this. I like the social aspect of Blood Bowl, and I'm sort of just sat there in silence while they're doing all this stuff. So there's that, but also it just feels a bit like you're then just having to be hyper focused on the dice that are being rolled and how they're sort of quickly moving them around. And the solution is, if they start doing that, to politely tell them to slow down, and ask them to show, exactly like you just said, ask them, like, show me your dice, like you rolled them, like people if you've got a dice tray next to you and you roll it in the tray and then you quickly roll it again, you're like, well, no, your dice tray is all the way over there next to you, it's not next to me, so just say to me, oh, it's that. That's one that can kind of grind on me a little bit.
I think it's always good etiquette as well to give your opponent just a quick second. So if, for example, you did roll the armor break, Chris, and it was like, a 10, at least then you can say 10, or people can see that it's a 10 rather than just roll that. If you imagine it, you had a POW, 10 armor break, and then you had a 9 for a KO. So instead of going roll, okay, just picking them up, put them in the KO box, it's just taking that moment. And as an opposition coach, don't be afraid to ask as well. Say, right, what was that? Because if they just throw in dice and suddenly they're throwing it, picking it up, and you're not getting the opportunity to check those dice, don't be afraid to call it out. Exactly. And if you are called out for that, it's not because you're going too fast. Maybe it's just clarity for the other player. Honestly, I have to say I'm fortunate. I've never come across that to date. But obviously, you are much more experienced and in the Blood Bowl,
experienced but not successful, Scott.
I didn't want to talk about it, but let's save that.
And equally, as Scott's pointed out, there's people like me who are still learning to count. So when people roll, I'm still trying to work out is that what is 4 + 5? Is that armor break or not? That kind of thing.
And if you go above finger count with Tom, it's a world of hurt. And socks are off, shoes are off. It's just grabbing someone in the shop, just say, "Give me your hand," and just.
Well, my rolls. Anything over a 2, and I'm confused.
It's
And-
So that's
yeah.
second. What's your third, Chris?
Yeah.
My third one is probably less about how people play and more a particular, like, there's odd mechanics within Blood Bowl that I cannot get on board with. One of them in particular is some of the special balls, and it's the mechanics that bring in unnecessary randomness. So if there are inducements or sponsors or things like that that you take, you normally take them and it's like, oh, this grants you this grants you this grants you this, something like that. In particular, some of the balls that put a level of randomness into the game. Now Blood Bowl is a dice rolling game, so you know there is an element of luck to it. You can just roll all ones in a game, as Tom knows very well, and it can go really badly for you. And we all accept that. You have to accept. You can't play Blood Bowl and not accept that, because otherwise you're going to go insane. It's things like, you know, your job in Blood Bowl is to minimize the risk and minimize the dice that you're rolling. Essentially, the less dice you roll, the less chances of getting the bad rolls. Having the right skills to give you re-rolls or whatever stuff like that, or to make things easier. You do all of that stuff, and you can be very, very good because you're mitigating all of the risk. When you throw in things like a squig ball, where you can do everything right on a turn. You can do a pickup and a handoff and a pass and run through and a dodge and all of this stuff. And you can mitigate all that risk. And you've done everything that you need to. And then at the end of the day, you could roll a dice and the ball could jump out of your hands and all of your hard work is undone. That's really frustrating because that's entirely out of your control and it's out of your opponent's control. And I'm like, if you played a perfect game of Blood Bowl, but at the end of every single turn, the ball jumped out of your hand, you could potentially just never score. And that is a risk that you can, that's kind of just complete randomness thrown in. And that I'm less keen on. Because there's just no control over it. And I just don't I guess I don't really get it.
I think from my perspective, it's a bit of a level playing field then. As you say, it's random for both players. It's usually in a tournament you get them. I think a lot of the tournaments now have started to introduce them. Even special characters have been introduced. We played at one where you had a special character if we couldn't field a full team at the next drive kind of thing. I think personally, you should be aware of them before the tournament, and you should. I know where you're coming from. There, it is really frustrating because it is, like you say, you could learn to play Blood Bowl, and you've picked your team specifically because it's the least amount of dice rolls to do. You know, you've got all the dodges, you've got all the blocks, you've got all the Hail Marys and all that kind of stuff to help you with all that. It's a tricky one. I was potentially about to say, would you have them more in a kind of a friendly match where it's more thematic?
Yeah,
where
I
you're
think
kind
I
of
think
playing
so.
for fun and just seeing rather than having them in a tournament.
I think you make a good point because when you go to a tournament, every tournament, most tournaments have different rule sets. Some are very similar, but there's normally individual rules. And the smart thing to do is to play to the rule set if you want to win. You take it. You play. You play to what is going to get you the victories and possibly take a team that's going to do that. So I went to a tournament where they had the squig ball. And because I was going to a tournament with the squig ball, I took Skaven rather than Lizardmen because I wanted the Edge 2 pickups with the Gutter Runners and I wanted sure hands on the thrower because I would have none of that with my Lizardman team. And I thought if I am already struggling to pick up on a 3-up, which shouldn't be too difficult, and then I don't have sure hands either, and then the ball could jump out of my hands, I'm not going to have any fun if I get unlucky with those rolls. So I chose to take Skaven because it fit the rule set better, because I could pick up on a 2-up with a Gutter Runner, or I had a built-in reroll with my thrower. So yeah, you do have to play to the rule set. I think there's just certain, especially when it's competitive like a league or a tournament, there's just certain things that I'm like, this seems like an unnecessary step towards the random. You know, in a friendly game, you can have so much fun with them. If it's getting a bit competitive, you don't want to lose because of a random game mechanic that is just going to screw you over when you've done all the hard work. I think that's the painful bit. What do you think, Scott?
I agree. I think less is more. That's the simple. That's the thing. It's like when people put mixers into a single malt whiskey, you're just ruining what has been developed with love and craft and skill over so many years. And actually, for me, things like squig ball or too many things like that, it's like that is a deciding factor on attending a tournament or not. I think if you're a TO, keep it simple to start with. People will come in terms of having a good Blood Bowl competition. You don't need to add in whistles and bells and everything that isn't really used.
I guess it's how you sell it, isn't it? Because like you might go to a tournament with all these random rules, but the prizes might be different. You know, there might be a prize to the person who gets screwed over the most by the squig ball. You know, there could be various other things that they build in to make it so that you could still do really well and get screwed over by the squig ball. So I guess they've got a place in the game. Just they're just a bit of a niggle of mine.
I suppose it's the fact is that, and you're starting to now go into like the meta and stuff, is that if you're going to a tournament and it's a NAF registered one, you'd want it to be relatively plain. You wouldn't want randomness in it because people wouldn't come because it's going to affect their rating on the NAF. Whereas, as I say, you could do a friendly tournament in your local gaming store where it's just the league, but just for one Saturday only, like we did a Stunty Cup, Stunty Sevens, very thematic, just stunties, apart from someone bringing lizards.
Stunty lizards. They were approved in the rule set, and I got trounced by snotlings.
What was the score on that?
4-0. Moving on.
Yeah.
But should we go? Should we? So we've given the listeners and the viewers options in terms of you might recognize some of these pet peeves. You might feel them yourself. You might have other peeves beyond what we've said as well. So, and hopefully we've given you some suggestions. Let's finish on a positive. Chris, come on, something positive for our audience.
I have grown to love the chess clock as a tournament tool. Absolutely love it. I think practicing with a chess clock forces you can see in front of you how much time you've got left. It forces you to make decisions. It forces you to prioritize what you're doing and be efficient. I think it makes you a better player playing against the chess clock. I've seen people who are quite slow play with a chess clock and be like a different player in the last few turns where they've not got much time left, and suddenly because they're prioritizing and focusing. I absolutely love it. It keeps you and your opponent honest because no one can stall for time. You've got your allowance, your opponent's got your allowance. It gives you something, I guess, a bit more tactical to think about. You've got to kind of think about how you use your time depending on what's going on. I've never had a game on a chess clock that I haven't really enjoyed, and I do think the chess clock has been a contributing factor. So I'm absolutely on board with chess clocks in tournaments. I think it's the way forward. I absolutely love it.
Tom, what's your like? What makes you smile? What makes your heart sing and put a spring in your step? Just Blood Bowl related for now, at the
moment. Just the game in general, but more importantly, when you go into tournaments, I've really, regardless whether won or lost or draw a game, I've loved handing out our new dice, please dice.
Oh, that's a bit shiny. There we are. Well, there it is.
Oh, yeah,
beautiful,
exactly.
aren't they?
So that's been really nice. The kind of nice kind of little gift to someone, and I've had swaps as well. Had some people give me some dice as well, and vice versa. So that's been quite nice little thing, and another new load of hobby stuff that I've now accumulated. How about yourself?
Come on, champ.
I'd actually written down dice reaction on people. Because actually you're the one who gave me this inspiration, Chris, on Saturday's tournament, when you gave out the Death on the Demon 2 Resurrection dice. Every single player that seemed to just lift themselves and like, oh, this is nice, I've got some dice. And especially because you gave it to people after game one, ready for game two. And it was really, really nice. So that, and especially as Tom, you said, when we are fortunate enough, so we are able to give out new dice, please dice, either blue, red, or yellow, or even if you're OCD, we do give mixtures available. But it's something people aren't expecting. It's an additional bonus. It's a nice little thing as well. Everyone in tabletop gaming loves dice, don't we all? So I really think that's a great thing, and it's really nice to see people's reaction when you've had a, whether they are fortunate or unfortunate to play us, whatever it might be. Getting an extra free set of dice is a wonderful thing. So I wholeheartedly support that.
I would say, yeah, actually, I would say there are various places out there, Black Hawk Down, Serious Swag, Counterattack Bases, various places that you can get custom dice made for your team. I appreciate it's an additional cost, and you've already paid a lot probably to get into this hobby and do it and go to tournaments and travel and tournament entry and all of that. I always now try to take some dice that I can either trade or give to someone, because it's a nice little thing to take home. And like you said, Scott, if you get completely demolished and someone says, that was a fun game, here's a set of dice, it does lift you a little bit as well. I think it's a nice, kind thing to do. If you can afford to do it, I would recommend it. And if you ever meet any of us at a tournament, we always try and have new dice, please, dice ready to give you. So say hello and see what you get.
Can we just put the caveat out there? If you are an owner of new dice, please dice, if they roll particularly well, then we will take full responsibility and credit for any rolls of 4+. If they don't roll so well, then we have no liability.
Equally, if you are using them in a tournament or even in your local league, send us a photo and we might put it up on our Instagram.
I mean, what a perfect segue, Tom. It's like a genius segue. Scott, if people want to send us pictures of them rolling new dice, please dice, maybe they've got some pet peeves that we've absolutely, highlighted to them that they agree with. Maybe there's a pet peeve that we haven't mentioned that they want to tell us about. How is it they get in touch with us?
If they do want to tell us their peeves, whether they're pet peeves or other peeves, whether they want to talk about chess clocks, dice reaction on people, whether or not they want to talk about how far do you go moving before you roll a dice or not, you can email us. And we've been getting some great emails, guys and girls. So thank you very much, everybody. Keep them coming, and we will be coming back to an email answer session in the near future. So if you want to get hold of us, it's new dice please, all one word, all lowercase, new dice please @gmail.com. But you can also see us streaming through other formats, guises, and listen on other podcast engines. How do they do that, Tom Hobble?
Oh, they can obviously get in touch with us, like you've just mentioned, but we've also been streaming on Blood Bowl Live on Twitch, on the YouTube channel Blood Bowl Live. And as I've just mentioned, if you've got some photos and you've got some great games going on, you can tag us in on Instagram under New Dice Please. And no, Blood Bowl Live on Instagram, is it? I can't remember now.
Blood Bowl Live everywhere.
Everywhere, Blood Bowl Live. Yes, we should really get a New Dice Please one as well. On that side.
If we got a New Dice Please Instagram, we might end up updating it. We'll see. We'll figure it out. We'll get there. We'll get there. We're only 20 episodes in. We'll get there eventually. Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you very much, my liege. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening to what I think will now be our longest podcast. But I think we've covered some good stuff. Oh, look at that trophy. Isn't it beautiful? Thank you, everybody, for being with us today. We have been New Dice Please, and we will see you next time.